What is going on, everybody? And welcome to the Friday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. End of another work week. If you are a 9-to-5 grinder or worse, he's currently off doing something. How many games? There was 9 games last night. I don't even know. I fell asleep so early. Was it? Wait, no. Detroit 2 Nuke was on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, last night was Ottawa 2. Drake Batherson, 2 goals and assists. Dylan Cousins got a goal. I don't know what Perron did, but I forget what he did, but he had a decent night as well.
Vegas 2 was okay. Saad had a 2-point game. Dorofeyev had a goal. Hurdle had 2 assists. Hannafin, donuts. That really hurt.
Yeah, San Jose 2 had a good night last night, and Pittsburgh 1 kind of got there, and they got there basically in the last 10 minutes of the game or something, like a full line goal or 2 full line goals, one of them with the empty net in the final 12 minutes or something like that. So Pittsburgh 1, Ottawa 2, San Jose 2, those are all pretty. Vegas 2, they all did well last night. I didn't do well. I had Columbus, who got shut out, and Edmonton, who are on tonight's slate. I'm telling you, man, I watched that whole Vegas-Columbus game. If Vegas can figure out their top line, I was tweeting about it, or Blue Sky, one of those sites, I forget which one. If they can figure out the top line, I'd like to see William Karlsson on that top line with Stone and Eichel, because Stone and Eichel honestly haven't been good since Christmas. It's been a pretty big slide for them. If Karlsson can kind of turn that top line around, that Saad, Hurdle, Dorofeyev line, they were carving up Columbus basically every single shift. In every game that I've watched of Vegas since Saad got there, it's been pretty much the same thing. That has been one of the best second lines in the league over the last month.
I know they're like Nick Roy in the bottom 6, but I feel like Roy up there with Eichel and Stone would work as well until Karlsson gets back. Like, they've tried Pearson, they've tried Barbashev, they've tried Olofsson, they've tried Howden, they've just tried.
I mean, I still think that they want Barbashev to work there. It's just it hasn't worked since Barbashev got hurt. It was like early mid-December or something like that. Like, since then, since he came back, it just hasn't worked.
Yeah, Karlsson would make some sense there, because you don't need to fuck with that second line at all. They're disgusting. We have 6 games here. We have a couple really expensive spots, a couple of really chalky spots. The usual suspects on these 6-game slates. Just makes me want to put my head through a wall. Still might. We'll navigate through it the best we can. There's some interesting spots if you don't want to spend up for the Edmonton nuclear option or Colorado. Let's talk about it before we do. Just wanted to say appreciate you guys hanging out with us on a Friday. If you do want to go premium, you can click either of the links in the chat there. If you do on the DFS side, you can use promo code Stochastic15. That will get you 15% off any week or month subscription. Odd Shopper, they might be doing a 7-day free trial. You have to just go through the link and check their offers. First game of the night here, Detroit Red Wings with a 2.4 total. Heading into Carolina, the Hurricanes have a 3.6. Carolina going Aho, Jarvis, Blake, Hall, Kotkaniemi, Roslovic, Logan Stankoven, Stahl, Martinook. Detroit going Larkin, Raymond, Soderblom, DeBrincat, Kane, Casper. I don't have any interest in Detroit 1 here. They're going to get the Stahl line. Now, I'm not 100% sure how they're going to do defensively with Stankoven, but Stahl and Martinook together this season, almost 700 minutes. 2.1 expected goals against per 60. Now, I would assume it's going to be similar to Svechnikov, more so than Jarvis. Like, they'll be fine. They won't be as good as Jarvis. That being said, another reason I'm out on Detroit 1 is they are power play merchants, and you can say what you want about Carolina 5-on-5, they haven't been great. They still do have a good penalty kill. One of the best in the league. So I don't particularly love Detroit 1 here, even though they're at 16-7. Obviously, it's a 6-game slate. So if you're playing 150 and you get a couple here and there, that's fine. But in single entry, I'm out of them. Detroit 2, they've played really well since Marco Kasper has gotten there. They may get decent 5-on-5 matchups. The issue is, again, Kane and DeBrincat do most of their damage on the power play, and they're 19K. So it's just like, why would I do that when Carolina 1 is $800 cheaper? So of the two Detroit lines, I kind of prefer Detroit 2, but I'm pretty much out on Detroit here. The Carolina side is a lot more interesting to me. Sebastian Aho, Jarvis Blake have played, not too much together this season, but Aho and Jarvis have excellent numbers together. This line is fully correlated at 18-2. Detroit has a miserable penalty kill. There isn't a matchup that I really care coming back the other way. They have a 15.2% top 2 stack, 14.7% projected ownership, which is completely fine. They might be one of my favorite lines outside of the really expensive options. We'll talk about Nashville, I guess. Winnipeg's a 20K, but in that 18, 19K range, you have the Forsberg line, you have Carolina 1, you have Utah 1, you have the Stamkos line. We'll talk about it, but Carolina 1 is pretty much way up there in that range, under 20K, above 17K is my favorite line of the night. So if you're not spending up for the Edmontons, the Colorados, the Winnipegs of the world, I do really like Winnipeg 1 here. Carolina 2, the Kotkaniemi line. Kotkaniemi, Roslovic, Hall coming in with 10.2% projected ownership. I get it because they're 11K. You get Hall on the top power play unit, and you can fit them with anybody. But for 11K and that ownership, I'm just going to go to Stahl, Martinook, Stankoven. If you want to add Hall into a Carolina 1 stack, fine. But it would be Carolina 1 for me, then the Stahl line. Carolina 2 is fine. I just don't want to go double-digit ownerships on a Jesper Kotkaniemi line, and pretty much out in Detroit.
Yeah, it's funny, the Detroit top line had been really, really good with Marco Kasper, but the rest of their lines were kind of suffering, and I think that's why you're seeing Elmer Soderblom on the top line, and Marco Kasper moving down to the second line.
That's because
yeah, it's because like the other two lines weren't really doing anything. And now if you look at the Detroit top line, since McClellan got hired, now that was at Christmas. That's almost 3 months ago now. 125 minutes without Marco Kasper, 2.3 expected goals, 2.4 actual goals without Kasper on the top line. It has just been real tough sledding. Like the expected goals with Marco Kasper are like 50% higher, as I see Josh is freezing. Imagine he'll be dropping out here soon. So I'm out on Detroit 1. Detroit 2 would be where my interest is on the Red Wing side. In a small sample, they've been really good with Kasper. Like Kasper's been kind of the guy to fix just about any line that he's been on. Detroit 2, 70 shot attempts, 3.7 expected goals, 2.8 actual goals per 60 at 5-on-5 with Kasper there. That's really good. At 19K, it's just way too expensive. Honestly, like I'd rather there are lines like $1,000, $2,000 more expensive that I'd much rather go play. Your MMEs and stuff like that. Maybe you get to them, but it is, as Josh mentioned, it's a really, really bad penalty killing or power play spot for Detroit because Carolina has such a good penalty kill. Like since January 1st, Carolina third lowest rate of goals against per 60 minutes on the PK. Over the last 5 weeks, the fewest shots allowed on the penalty kill. So it's a really bad power play spot for Detroit. If you want to play Detroit too, go ahead in your MMEs or something. I am absolutely not in on the Red Wings. For me, it's more about the Carolina side. As Josh said, it's a really good power play matchup for Carolina. Now, the Carolina power play has been struggling for a couple months now, and that was like with or without Mikko Rantanen. And Detroit's not taking a ton of penalties. They're at 1.9 times shorthanded per game over the last 5 weeks. That's the second lowest rate in the league. You go back to January 1st, it's the lowest rate in the league for time shorthanded per game. So Detroit's really not giving up any very many power plays, but their penalty kill has been atrocious. Again, since January 1st, third most goals against most of any team on this slate. Going back 5 weeks, fifth most goals against most of any teams on the slate. This is probably, if Carolina can get like 2 or 3 power plays, it's the best power play spot on the board. So I would be kind of tempted to power play stack Carolina here, just because one, like Taylor Hall's actually been pretty good for Carolina since he came over. Like his line with Kotkaniemi has been really good, regardless of which winger that they've had. So I don't see why they'd be any worse with Roslovic, especially against a very mediocre team like Detroit. It is a very good power play spot for them. That top line for Carolina is perfectly correlated. So then you add in Taylor Hall. Those 4 forwards, you're looking at what, 22,000? I think it's 22,600. Like very reasonable. You add in Shane Goss to spare, you're on your way. Again, this is a great power play spot. Aho and Jackson Blake have been very good together. 3.4 expected goals, 2.7 actual goals, shooting under 8%. Now, Carolina typically doesn't have high shooting percentages. If they were even league average, like they'd be scoring like 25% above, 30% above the league average. So like they really don't need that much of a bump to be excellent. I really do like Carolina 1. I think I'm more interested in just full-on power play stacking here. This is a really good power play spot for the Hurricanes, assuming they can kind of get right. They have been struggling for a little while. I think Stankoven will be just fine with Stahl and Martinook. Like they're pretty much able to carry just about anyone that plays next to them. And Stankoven is a really good offensive player. It's kind of like in 2 years, he could be what Seth Jarvis is now. You know what I mean? I honestly think he could be that good. I think they're fine as a filler. I agree with you. I'd rather play Stankoven, Stahl, Martinook over the Kotkaniemi line if I were to play a filler here from Carolina. But it's really like a Carolina 1/Carolina power play stack where my interest is here.
Yeah, my internet went crazy there for a couple minutes, but it's back. Yeah, I do agree on the Carolina power play stack. Edmonton Oilers with a 3.4 total heading into Long Island. No one is happy about that. The Islanders have a 3.1 total. Edmonton played last night. They went to the nuclear option: McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Arvidsson, Skinner, Henrique, Nugent Hopkins, Podkolzin, Brown. Islanders going Horvat, Palmieri, Duclair, Lee, Holmstrom, Pajot. I would imagine that sticks. The Edmonton lines. We won't know for sure, but they've been putrid since the Four Nations break. So they're just gonna they need to get anything going here. They're 23,600 with a 34% top 2 stack, 10.5% projected ownership. It's why you see so much ownership on these 11K lines. The Kotkaniemi line at 10%, the Anders Lee Holmstrom Pajot line 19.6%. Just like there isn't great value that you can fit with Edmonton. There's obviously some cheaper Utah lines, some cheaper Seattle lines that you can maybe fit. It's just, the thing with the Islanders is their penalty kill sucks, but they don't take a lot of penalties. And Edmonton isn't one of those teams that has been drawing a ton of penalties. It's been getting better. I do worry that they only get 1 or 2 opportunities here tonight. These guys are going to play super much heavy minutes over 20 minutes, especially if it's a close game. In single entry, it's one of those things where like 23,600 is a bit rich for my blood, especially when you can do something with Colorado for $2,000 cheaper in an excellent spot. So if I was MMEing, I think Edmonton one is super interesting, especially like I would maybe get over the field because you can at least run through some of these cheaper options that aren't super chalky and maybe get lucky. I don't particularly love them in single entry because Colorado's cheaper, but I think they are a very good spend up if you can get comfortable with in there. Like for me, my price tolerance is about as high as Colorado one. 23,600, again, a little bit high for me. I think they're a great play here tonight, but I'm probably out on them for price reasons, not because I don't like the matchup. That's about it on Edmonton. If you want to play Arvidsson, Skinner, Henrique ahead, they're 11K. If you're power play stacking, Colorado or something, you can throw them in the giant basket of 11K lines. The Islanders side is kind of insane. Horvat, Palmieri, Duclair, 14,100, 9.3% top two stack, 23.6% ownership. Lee, Holmstrom, Pajot, 4.7% top two stack, 19.6% projected ownership. I don't want to play either of these lines. Neither of them have been that good. Like the Horvat line has been creating a fair bit, and they're fully correlated. They're shooting like 2%. Lee, Holmstrom, Pajot, they're pretty high event. It's just like 20% on an 11,800 line. I'm definitely out on them. That top line at least is interesting where you can get different without getting crazy, but like 24% is insane. If I had to play one of the lines, it'd be Horvat, Palmieri, Duclair. I'm not interested in playing either of these Islanders lines at chalk. It's just chalk Islanders is just a death sentence to me. So I'm out on the Islanders. If you want to play them for their prices and, fully correlated or whatever, I think that's fine. I just think this game is more MME considering what I want to do in single entry.
I'm just not playing the Islanders. I mean,
yeah.
like, listen, man, I was looking at the ownership projections for tonight. Horvat, Palmieri, Lee, and Pajot are projected to be the 4 highest owned players on the slate. Now, like you said, I get it. They are very reasonably priced. It's not like Edmonton's been good since the Four Nations break. It's a road back-to-back, et cetera, et cetera. It's not like this is the only spot on the slate that has low-owned play or low-cost players, right? Like we just went through Carolina, who has 2 lines that are very cheap. We're in a little bit, we're going to talk about Calgary, which is in a tough matchup, but they're also at home, and considering some injuries and suspensions and all that, there are some cheap guys that might have to get like a lot of minutes. Anaheim's at home to Nashville here tonight, and Nashville's terrible. Seattle, we don't really love playing Seattle, but if I have the chance of playing like a 2% Seattle line or a 25% Islanders line, I'm going to play the Seattle line every single time. So it's just a function of ownership. I'm not playing these guys at 20 to 25, maybe 30% ownership on individual players in some single entry contests. So if anything, I would probably play Horvat, Duclair, and Palmieri just because, they are perfectly correlated. Relatively speaking, they have their top 2 stack percentages 2 times higher. I'm just not playing the Islanders at that ownership. It's just not happening. Honestly, I'd be more tempted to go to like the third line and do, depending on who's in and out of the lineup, because like Engvall's been in and Engvall's been out, Siplikov, healthy scratching and all that stuff. So we'll see what it actually looks like at warm-up, but like a 2-man of like Siplikov, Zizekas to pair with my Colorado, I'd be way more interested in doing that than playing like 25% Jean-Gabriel Pajot. Like that, it's just the way it is. So I'm out on the Islanders. For me, it's about the Edmonton side. Now, we've seen them do this plenty of times this year where they've gone to Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman as a top line. And then the next game, they go back to normal lines. We've also seen them just kind of stick with it. I really don't know what's going to happen here. It's funny. I was actually looking at like what's going wrong with Edmonton this year, because the power play's still been great. Like we were talking about yesterday, the power play since Hyman came back from injury in early December, the power play's been arguably the best in the NHL, maybe second, like right behind Detroit. It's 5-on-5 that's been a big problem. I was looking at McDavid's numbers. I was looking at some of the tracking data from a website called All Three Zones. His rate of high danger passes is 40% lower this year than the prior 2 seasons. So even though like sometimes the expected goals numbers are still really, really good, I can kind of understand why the shooting percentage has taken a little bit of a dive. With that said, like if Edmonton gets one power play here tonight, the Islanders penalty kill is bad enough for Edmonton to go 1-for-1 and probably score within the first 30 seconds. Like this is really they're not quite as bad as Detroit, but it's pretty close. So it's a really good power play spot for Edmonton. You look at some of the ownership numbers, like Zach Hyman under 8%, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins at 1% ownership projection. Like, listen, Nugent's having a bad season. Does he have more than a 1% chance of having a ceiling game tonight against the New York Islanders? Like, yes, like regardless of which line he's on, just because he's on the top power play unit. So, like, I have some interest in Edmonton here. I will say I think I generally have more interest in one-offs or defensemen than full stacking. So, like, I think a one-off Draisaitl certainly makes a lot of sense. I think, we'll talk about the defenseman later. I think just throwing one of the defensemen in, I think makes a lot of sense. I'm not super interested in stacking, but I will say like 1% Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, 3% Victor Arvidsson, like these types of things against the New York Islanders team that's just not very good is one of those things that I always keep in the back of my mind when I play on a short slate like this.
Yeah. Before we move to the next game, we have a $99.99 super chat from John Bond 12. Thank you very much. Been on a heater since Four Nations. Thanks. Always appreciate your analysis. I saw you won the 222 last night. You also finished second in the $33 5 max. I don't know what else. I don't have the lineup up in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it was Ottawa 2 with some Vegas 2. I remember looking at it at like 1 in the morning. But yeah, congrats to you. Hopefully that heater stays hot. And I appreciate the super chat.
Yes. Certainly really do appreciate the super chat. Glad we could help in any way possible. Sounds like you probably don't really need our help anymore, but always appreciate showing a little bit of love, and let's hope we can keep that heater rolling right through the end of the season.
For sure. Would be nice. Dallas Stars with a 2.6 total heading into Winnipeg. The Jets have a 2.9 total. Neil Pionk out for Winnipeg. Rope Hintz still out for Dallas. So Winnipeg's going Connor Scheifele, Velarde, Ehlers, Perfidi, Nemestikov, Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton. Dallas going Johnston, Ben, Rantanen, Duchesne, Robertson, Granlund, Marchment, Bork, Dodonov. These Dallas lines are kind of interesting because, I mean, this isn't the matchup for it because this is a pretty bad matchup, especially with Hellebuyck in net. But Johnston and Ben have played a lot together this season, mostly with Evgeny Dodonov, and they have really good numbers. And then you throw Mikko Rantanen into that mix on that line. I think that could be a really good line. The problem is it's 17,300 going up against Connor Hellebuyck. You do get 2 guys on the top power play, and it is where you beat Hellebuyck is on the power play. They're coming in at 2.9% projected. Listen, they're not my favorite. I'm not running out to play Dallas here tonight. I wish they were in a better matchup because I do really like that line. But at 3% on a 6-game slate, I think you can consider them in, 5, 10, 20 lineups. You know what I mean? Duchesne, Robertson, Granlund, not as interesting to me, but you do get 2 guys on the top power play unit there. They're $700 cheaper, coming in around the same ownership. Duchesne and Robertson have played limited time this season together, but that's probably when Robertson was playing pretty awful. So I don't take that sample for much here, but I feel like that could be a decent line as well. I prefer Johnston, Ben, Rantanen. I think either two are fine in MME here tonight, even though it's Hellebuck. It's a 6-game slate, and they're coming in under 3%. My interest is the Winnipeg top line here. 15.3% top two stack, 7.4% projected ownership, 20K. You know, without Heiskanen, their power play or their penalty kill has taken a hit. Their 5-on-5 defense has taken a hit. Winnipeg one's fully correlated. They're not my favorite of the spend up options. I still think I like Carolina more than Winnipeg here, but fully correlated 20K in a better matchup than it may appear to the eye. I do like Winnipeg one. I think Winnipeg two is fine as well. Like Cliffy noted it on Wednesday, I believe, that they're generating or creating the best chances of any of the lines. It just so happens they aren't playing a ton of minutes. They are only 13,100. You only get Ehlers on the top power play unit. Fine with an Ehlers one off. They're fine. Like, I don't think you can fit them in with Edmonton. That you probably could fit them in with Colorado if you punt. So you can throw them in that basket of filler lines. If you need super, super cheap because your power play stacking Edmonton or something or Colorado, you can take like a 2-man off Winnipeg 3, Lowry Niederreiter or Lowry Appleton, something like that. But for me, it would be Winnipeg 1, and I do like the Johnston, Rantanen, and Ben line. I just wish it was a better matchup.
Yeah, it's funny. I was looking at Hellebuck and how he's done at home this year. He had a couple bad games like early in the season. One against Toronto, one against Tampa. I don't think anybody will blame him for that. Since then, he's just been absolutely lights out. It's like a 942 save percentage over the last 3.5 months in his home starts. And I think he's only allowed more than 3 goals once. And he's facing I think it's 5.5 high danger shots against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, which, like, if you looked across the league, it would be one of the best marks in the league. So, like, he's playing well. The team is making it pretty easy on him. It's just not. It's just a really bad spot for Dallas. Like, I agree with you in theory. Like, Johnston, Ben, Rantanen could probably be pretty good. I was looking at just Johnston and Ben's numbers this season. 2.9 expected goals, 3.8 actual goals per 60 minutes. Remember, a lot of that is with getting Dadonov on the other wing. I think they could be really good with Rantanen in there. It's just kind of the worst matchup for it. Now, in saying that, you do get 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. It is a mid-price line coming in under 3% ownership. And this Dallas power play has just been absolutely lights out since Thomas Harley took over. I was looking 19 points since Heiskanen got hurt. The top power plays at 19.3 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-4. I think Edmonton, the elite power plays like Edmonton, Detroit would be at like 13. Now, obviously, a lot of that is shooting percentage driven, but even if you cut their shooting percentage by a third, they're still at 12, 13 goals per 60 minutes, which would be one of the best marks in the league. Like, this has legitimately been one of the best power plays in the NHL. I mean, since Harley took over for sure, but even going back before that, like, they were starting to come around under Heiskanen before he got hurt. So it's been that case for about 2 months now. I don't mind playing Rantanen, Johnston, Ben. I think that's the line that I would play. I really do worry about Robertson, Duchesne, Granlund, because the thing is like, Michael Granlund is a horror show defensively, and Winnipeg's lines are good enough to get that line pinned in their zone, especially with the injuries that Dallas has to their blue line. Like, Heiskanen's out, Liam Bichel's out. Like, they're really relying on your Dumba, Brendan Smith, Ilya Lyubushkin, like Cody Ceci. Like, that's just not it after the top pair. So, I think it would be Rantanen, Johnston, Ben, or bust for me. On the Winnipeg side, I do like the top line here in theory. At 20K, like, 20K, 15.3% top two stack, 7.4% ownership. That's all fine. For an extra $1,200, I can go play Colorado. You know what I mean? We'll get to Nashville in a little bit. Nashville's cheaper. We'll get to Utah in a little bit. Utah's cheaper. Like, if I was playing 20 lineups here tonight, I would probably have Winnipeg in 2 or 3 of them in a single entry. I think there are a couple other spots I'd rather go to. And like, this line has not been good coming out of the Four Nations break. Their last 130 minutes, I think it's been 10 games since Four Nations, maybe 9 games. 60 shot attempts, 2.4 expected goals, 2.4 actual goals per 60 minutes. It's just not been good. Eventually, I think they're going to regain their footing. I don't want to rely on that in a single entry when I think there are a couple other spots I'd rather play. So I think I'm out on Winnipeg 1. Winnipeg 2 is honestly, I think, the most interesting line here. They've been really good, 3.5 expected goals per 60 since the Four Nations break. They've been really good for a few months now. Ice time is the problem, especially when they're at home now. And Lowry's going to get the top line matchup. So the Perfidi, Nemesnikov line is basically the third line. Like Nemesnikov and Perfidi will be like 13, maybe 14 minutes. Ehlers will be like 16 with some power play time. I would be more tempted to like two-man stack Perfidi Ehlers, Nemesnikov Ehlers than I would be full stacking. I think Winnipeg 3 is perfectly fine. Like, they'll get minutes because they're in a shutdown matchup. They'll play 15 to 16 minutes. They're a filler status that you can play with, Edmonton and Colorado. But I think it's Winnipeg 2 I kind of like best. In general, I really don't love stacking from this game.
Yeah, me either. I wish Dallas was in a little bit better matchup at that ownership, and it would be a lot different conversation. But anyway, Colorado Avalanche with a 3.2 total. Heading into Calgary, the Flames have a 2.3. Big news for Calgary is Mikael Backlund is out. So Calgary going Kadri, Huberdeau, Coronado, Coleman, Sharangovich, Farabee, Frost, Pospisil, Dryden, Hunt.
Those are kind of the guesses.
Yes,
they didn't have a practice run because yesterday was an optional. So we're assuming Sharangovich is the 2C with Coleman. We don't know for sure.
It could be Pospisil.
Well, Sharangovich is playing center. They said that, but we don't know if it's going to be Coleman and Sharangovich or Frost and Coleman.
Yeah. So what that tells me is the Flames are in shambles. If Sharangovich has to be your 2C. Listen, the Colorado one is already in an elite matchup. Like, even if Backlund was in, none of these lines were good defensively. This Dustin Wolf's in net, and he's been great this season, but like this is a tall task because Coleman or Backlund is one of those guys who eats a ton of minutes. He takes the top competition, whether they've been good or not. Like, he goes out against them and does whatever. Now you're asking players to step up into different roles. The penalty kill is already trash. Colorado is a wagon right now. So I do really like Colorado 1. Now, if you do want a power play stack, you can leave off Lehkonen and add Nichushkin. They go from 21.2 to 21.4. Still, $2,200 cheaper than Edmonton 1. Colorado 1 is currently constituted 26.6% top 2 stack, 15.7% ownership. I like going to power play stack here. Listen, Lehkonen is a very good 5-on-5 player. You can leave him in if you want because it's also a good 5-on-5 matchup. I just kind of tend to go power play stack. Colorado 2 at 16.4. Like, the problem is you don't have McKinnon or Netchus. So it's like cutting off your nose to spite your face. So if I'm going to do some sort of power play stack, I'm just adding a guy to Colorado 1 and taking off Lehkonen. So, you can go like Nelson, Nichushkin, McKinnon if you wanted to. Go double center, get a little bit different. But for me, it would be the two most important guys from the outside of the defenseman, which we'll get to at the end, Maybe McKinnon 1, Netches 2, and I think Nichushkin 3. If you want to add in Nelson, go ahead. I do some sort of power play stack on the Colorado side. The Calgary side is, I think you have to consider Calgary 1 by default here because they're only 15-4. They're fully correlated. And with Backlund out, this Kadri line is going to play heavy minutes. And that's why, like, Islanders 1 at 24% or whatever isn't even a thought to me. I don't give a crap that Calgary's in a bad spot, and they are. Colorado's generally been very good defensively. They have a pretty good penalty kill. Blackwood has been very good, although it could be Wedgwood here tonight.
Yeah, I think it's Wedgwood tonight.
Yeah, which helps Calgary 1. Wedgwood's been good though for Colorado. And like this Calgary line, Kadri and Huberdeau may play 21, 22 minutes. So I'd much rather play Calgary 1 than Islanders 1 here. I don't love playing them, but if you're in that range and you're between Islanders 1 and Calgary 1, the decision is almost automatic for me. So Colorado power play stack and Calgary 1.
Yeah, I think the only line. What's that?
Someone in chat just said it's Vladar in that.
No, he said is Vladar.
Oh, I thought they said Vladar's in that. I was like,
no,
no.
They already confirmed Dustin Wolf. So, yeah, I wish. I think Calgary knows better than that. On the Calgary side, like, yeah, I agree with you, Kadri, Huberdeau, and Coronado. Like, not only is Backlund out, but Zari is suspended, right? So that takes 2 regulars out of their lineup, and they don't play the fourth line very much. Calgary is a team where, you know, the top line, when everybody's healthy, the top line plays like 20 minutes. The second line plays like 18 minutes. The third line plays like 13, 14 minutes. And then the fourth line plays like 7-8 minutes. Like the fourth line got like the Lombergs, the Rooneys, you know, Adam Klapka is on the roster. Dryden Hunt got called up. Unless for some reason they decide to give them a lot more ice time against the Colorado Avalanche, which as someone that wants to play Colorado, I would recommend. Then they have to give those minutes to Huberdeau, to Kadri, to Coronado, to Coleman, to, you know, even Farabee and Frost to an extent. Like Sharon Govich was already playing like 17, 18 minutes a game as it was. Like these guys at the top of the lineup, like the top 6-7 forwards, are probably all going to play 17 to 23 minutes. So there are a lot. Those are the reasons why you'd want to play Calgary 1. You know, the Calgary top line with Coronado there, 2.8 expected goals, 71 shot attempts per 60. Problem is they're shooting 4.5%. Calgary is typically a team that has trouble finishing. 4.5% is abnormally low. Like even a bad finishing line will be at like 6.5%. So like they'll be better, but will they be even league average? I think that's a fair question to ask. Now, Calgary is drawing a lot of power plays. That's kind of one thing that we can hang our hat on here too, is that this is a perfectly correlated line with a Flames team drawing 3.1 power play opportunities per game over the last 7 weeks, including the Four Nations. Going back to January 1st, they're at 3 power play opportunities per game, the 4th most in the league, 2nd most on the slate behind Detroit. They are drawing a lot of power plays. Colorado's penalty kill has generally been good, so it's not like it's a good power play spot or anything, but at a certain point, volume matters. So, you know, if they can get like 4 power plays, maybe they can sneak one in. I don't mind Calgary 1 here. Honestly, I don't even mind something like a Blake Coleman one-off or a Sharon Govich one-off or something like that. Like, I'm not a huge fan of them, but like in the mid-4s for guys that are probably going to have to play upwards of 20 minutes, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. But yes, clearly I'd way rather play Colorado in this game. You know, that Colorado top line's up to 4.3 goals per 60 minutes and 180 minutes together, 5-on-5. It's absolutely preposterous stuff, especially where they're only shooting 10.3%. This isn't a line shooting 13 or 14%. They're at 10% basically. And it's funny, last weekend, there's a quote from Jared Bednar, the coach, saying he really liked getting Brock Nelson and Charlie Coyle because it added to their depth. and gave them more options. And then Nathan McKinnon's next 3 games, 25.5 minutes, 24 minutes, 25.5 minutes. It's like, it's he's playing even more now that they have better forward depth. It's just absolutely insane. So yeah, I really do like Colorado 1. It is a very good power play spot. I mentioned how Calgary's drawing a lot of power plays. They're also giving up a lot of power plays. 3.3 times shorthanded per game over the last 5 weeks. That's the second most in the league, most on the slate. Since January 1st, second most in the league, again, most on the slate. Colorado could easily get 3, if not 4 or 5 power plays here tonight. And without Backlund to help them at 5-on-5, without Backlund to help them on the penalty kill, that is very advantageous for the Avalanche. So it's just, I'd way rather play Colorado. They're one of my favorite spots on the night. Obviously, Colorado 1 isn't even that expensive. 21,200. Their top 2 stack is the second highest on the board behind that fully stacked Edmonton top line. They come in at like 20% ownership. Honestly, on a 6-game slate, I really don't care. It's just a matter of, do you want to play Colorado 1? Do you want to take off Lekin and put it in Nichushkin? Do you want to, like you said, do you want to do a double center plus Natchez? I would, no matter what I do, I build around Nathan McKinnon. I probably have Natchez in there as well, but at the very least, I build around Nathan McKinnon and just kind of go from there. For me, this is a Colorado game, but if you're MMEing, you can't forget about Calgary 1 just because they're going to get so much perfectly correlated ice time.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the chat, they're saying the horn almost came out, the Fiesta horn, the Marty Jones horn. I almost put on the sombrero. It almost got real in here, but it's Friday, not Saturday. If it was Saturday, it would have hit the fan. But yeah, Nashville Predators with a 3.3 total heading into Anaheim. The Duckies have a 2.8 total. Sam Colangelo is out. Ross Johnston is out. They called up Nikita Nesterenko. I would imagine he just takes Sam Colangelo's spot with McTavish and Gauthier. Brunette for the Predators said Michael Bunting is a game-time decision. They've been going 11-7 for a while, so if Bunting's in, they'll probably just go 12-6, and maybe he slots in with Vrana and Svechkov or something. I don't know. But we'll see. As it stands, Nashville going Forsberg, Marchessault, Sissons, Stamkos, O'Reilly, Evangelista. Ducks going Vetrano, Killorn, Carlson, Zegras, Terry, Strome. Is that right? No.
Yeah, Zegras, Terry, Strome.
Zegras, Terry, Strome.
Yeah.
It's not Vetrano, Terry, Strome.
No.
Okay. So here we are again with Nashville and ownership on Nashville. Forsberg, Marchessault, Sissons, 19,200, 15.7% top 2 stack, 10.6% projected ownership. Listen, it's a small sample. They've been pretty bad at 5-on-5. Like their actual goals are fine. Their expected goals are absolute crap. But this Ducks team is an abomination defensively. So the thing is, to me, I'd rather play Carolina 1 than this Nashville line. However, it's a really, really good power play matchup. So I'd find a way to get, if I'm playing Nashville, to get Forsberg in my lineup. I happen to like Stamkos, O'Reilly, Evangelista more. They're $1,500 cheaper, coming in at 7.8% projected ownership. They've actually been decently better. 3.6 expected goals for per 60, 5.7 actual in a 52-minute sample. Eventually, that's going to even out because Stamkos has been on an absolute heater. But again, the Ducks suck. What I think I would do in this situation is leave off Evangelista and add in Forsberg. It becomes a $21,500 stack, which is a bit annoying because you can get Colorado 1 for essentially the same price. So, that's an MME type deal for me. I think on the Nashville side, I'm more about one-offs than single entry, a one-off Forsberg, a one-off Stamkos, a one-off O'Reilly, something like that. I don't really want a full stack Nashville here. unless if I had to, it would be Stamkos, O'Reilly, Evangelista. It's just such a good power play spot that I want to get as many power play guys in as I can. On the Ducks side, like Nashville's really bad. So I think it would be Strome, Terry, Zegras for me at 14-1. 3.2% top two stack, 5.7% projected ownership. Like they're a fifth of the ownership as the Islanders top line, and they're the same price. This is another line where I'd much rather play Anaheim than the Islanders. Like this is a decent matchup for Anaheim, and their problems really haven't been offensively. They've been defensively. So I'll go to Zegras, Terry, Strome here. Am I going to prioritize them in single entry? I don't think so, but they'll at least be on the list, and I'd much rather play them than the Islanders.
Yeah. Just a quick note on Nashville. Like if Bunting does play, I imagine he comes in on the third line. It's just Nashville's actually won 4 games in a row. It's kind of funny. It's against Boston, Seattle, Chicago, San Jose. So as long as Nashville keeps playing non-playoff teams, they might be all right. But they've won 4 games in a row. They basically stuck to this top 6 for every single game, all through the game. So like, I think Bunting comes in. Actually, I think he boots Vrana off the third line. But it's one of those things where like, if Anaheim's up 1-0 after the first period, then I think you see some changes pretty quickly. But yeah, I do think Bunting does come in on the third line for Nashville. It's worth mentioning just because like he's 3,500. Like he's actually cheaper than Vrana. So it like he makes sense as like a one-off. Assuming he does play, we won't know until warm-ups, obviously. On the Nashville side, I'm tempted to just make it a power play stack, as you mentioned. Like I think you do have to build around Forsberg. I was looking at the Nashville projections. Forsberg's projection is 3 points higher than the next closest player, and then almost 6 points higher than the third closest player. So like, he has the best point per dollar value of any forward on their team. So I do think you have to just kind of build around Forsberg, like you would build around McKinnon with Colorado, and then kind of take it from there. The Nashville power play has obviously not been as good without Roman Josi running things. We'll get to defensemen in a second. Nick Blankenberg is still only 3,200 running the top power play. So it does make things cheaper if you want to do like, O'Reilly, Stamkos, Forsberg, Blankenberg or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's expensive, but it's not prohibitive. Anaheim has, they've been taking penalties, but not to an extreme degree, 2.8 times shorthanded per game over the last 8 weeks. It's higher than league average, but it's not extreme. It's certainly not in the Calgary range or anything like that. Closer to the middle of the league since January 1st. So they do take penalties, sometimes struggle to kill them off. But it's not like a tremendous like power play spot in terms of how bad the penalty kill is. Like they're not even as bad as teams like, Detroit and the Islanders that we've talked about. So I'm not super jazzed on playing Nashville here tonight. I honestly think what I would like best from Nashville is something from that third line, a 2-man of like Svechkov and Smith, or assuming it's Svechkov and Bunting, like something like that. Svechkov and Cole Smith kind of fine together so far. Just over 50 minutes, 63 shot attempts, 2.8 expected goals. Cole Smith is playing like 16 minutes a game over his last 5 games. Like he's getting decent ice time for a quote, a third liner. And if you look at that Anaheim bottom 6, like the third line was doing well offensively, but they're bad defensively. And the fourth line is also bad defensively. Like it's a pretty good matchup for Nashville 3. So I think Nashville 3, some sort of 2-man out of that is a possibility to pair with, your Colorados and your Edmontons and stuff like that. I think that's what I kind of like best on that side. On the Anaheim side, for me, it is the Zegras line. Carlson, like Frank Vetrano isn't a play driver necessarily. He's just kind of like a finisher. Alex Killorn's not a great playmaker. I think Carlson will be. I don't think he's a great one right now. So, like, kind of, I'm not playing the third line. Actually, I don't think Nestorenko jumps on the third line. I think it's Brett Leeson that moves up. Leeson's a guy, like, when somebody's hurt, they move him up in different spots in the lineup. But, I mean, again, we'll find out at warm-up. But Zegras and Terry, like, back in, like, when Trevor Zegras kind of first broke into the league, a few years ago, him and Troy Terry were pretty good offensively together at 5-on-5. 2.8 expected goals, 2.9 actual goals across Zegras' first 2 seasons. It's not great, but it's pretty good. Now, things have gotten worse as Anaheim's gotten worse and as Zegras has been injured, et cetera, but they do have a history of succeeding together. So Zegras, Terry, Strome is where I would go. I agree with you. I'd rather play them than Anaheim. Like, this is not a good Nashville team. Like, over the last 5 weeks, middle of the pack by expected goals against at 5-on-5, near the bottom of the league by actual goals against. The penalty kill's not good. I would rather play Anaheim than the Islanders here tonight, and I think it's the Zegras line specifically. And then on the Nashville side, I honestly think, given how I'm probably building my lineups, it's Nashville 3.
Let's get to the last game of the night here. Utah Soakers with a 3.2 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 2.8. Utah going Keller, Schmaltz, Cooley, Genther, Hayton, Kerfoot, Doan, Krause, McBain. Seattle going Beniers, Schwartz, Kako, Tolvanen, Stevenson, Eberle, McCann, Burakovsky, Neiman. The Seattle power play units are not great anyway. Like, Yanni Neiman certainly helps. But, like, they're spread out across 3 even strength lines, and it's not a good 5-on-5 matchup. And the Seattle power play isn't good enough to where you want to stack across lines to make a Seattle power play stack. I think I don't have a ton of interest in Seattle here at all. I guess by default, I'll take the cheapest one, McCann, Burakovsky, Neiman at 12,200. It's a pretty good power play spot, pretty bad 5-on-5 spot. So one-offing Yanni Neiman is fine. Eberle one-off, Beniers one-off, something like that. But I'm not really into full stacking Seattle here. My interest lies on the Utah side, and there are 3 playable lines depending on what you want to do. I do like that top line of Keller, Schmaltz, and Cooley, but they are 18,700. They are only coming in at 5.8% projected ownership. They've played very well together. Seattle's top line is probably their best defensive line, so that kind of gives me a little bit of a pause, especially when you have Carolina in that range. So for me, I would go to Utah 2 here. Hayton, Genther, Kerfoot. They've been fine. They've actually been really good, even with Kerfoot there. 3.6 expected goals, 1.9 actual. So their shooting percentage is a little bit low, but they're 16,100 coming right in their top 2. You get Hayton and Genther on the top power play unit. I do really like them. They're going to see, a fair bit of that Chandler Stevenson line. I don't care that they have good defensive numbers in a 40-minute sample. You send Chandler Stevenson out in a long sample, eventually there's going to be bad numbers there. So Genther, Hayton, Kerfoot for me. And also, if you're looking to do something expensive, I will shout out Doan, McBain, Krause. Now, Doan's 5,100, but the other 2 are 6,700 for the 2 of them. And they're both on the second unit. 3.25 expected goals for, 4.9 actual in 110 minutes. So, like, if you're looking to do some crazy power play, I would look at a McBain, Krause 2-man, especially because they've played well. And for a line at 11,800, we've seen, the Islanders' second lines at 20%. We've seen some Carolina lines above 10%. This line's coming in at 0.6% projected, and they've played very, very well in 110 minutes. So if you need a couple of cheap guys, it's Utah 3 for me, but otherwise Utah 2.
Yeah, Josh Doan being more expensive than Troy Terry is pretty wild, especially considering like it's not like Anaheim's in a bad matchup. They're in a really good matchup. That's why like I do like Utah 3. Like they're a pretty good line. Josh Doan at 5,100 is preposterous. It's actually obscene. It's not quite. Actually, it might be as bad as like 6,400 Andre Kuzmenko or whatever it was. Like that. Like it's in that tier. So I do like Utah 3, generally speaking. I don't really like them given Doan's price. You know, if you do want to get to them, like Utah 3, 3.2 expected goals, 72 shot attempts per 60. Like they've been really good. They don't get a ton of minutes. And I do think Doan is very much overpriced for not only what he's done, but for his role on the team. Like he'll play 13, 14 minutes for 5,100. That's it. That's just an easy pass. For me, it's about the Utah power play. The Utah power play has actually been really, really good. Like this current iteration with Barrett Hayton on it, with Dylan Guenther healthy, like, you know, all that. They've been really, really good, like well above average for a top power play unit. The Seattle penalty kill is very bad. So I do like, you know, a Hayton, Guenther, Keller, Schmaltz, Keller, Guenther, something like that. Like I said, I was build around McKinnon with Colorado, and I would build around Forsberg with Nashville. I would build around Guenther for Utah just because it is such a good power play matchup. And I'm going to be honest, it's not even that bad of a 5-on-5 matchup. Like, you know, Seattle at times has been okay defensively, but over the last 6 weeks, by expected goals against, they're 20th in the league. Like they're worse than Nashville. They're worse than the Penguins. It's not been a good stretch. Their actual goals against at 2.9. It's tied with the Buffalo Sabres. That's at 5-on-5, and they still have a bad penalty kill. Oh, and Philip Grubauer's starting tonight. It's not Joey Decord. So I really do like Utah here. I think they're the pivot away from Colorado if you don't want to play chalky Colorado, because like, you know, the Utah top line, maybe it comes in around 10% in some single entry contests, but I bet it comes in single digits, has good leverage. I like the Utah power play guys the best in this game. On the Seattle side, I think it's the Beniers line. McCann and Burakovsky and them aren't getting much ice time. I don't really have much faith in this Chandler Stevenson line. At least the top line stays together at 5-on-5, plays a lot of minutes, been able to generate some offense, 2.6 expected goals per 60 since the Four Nations break. You know, they'll get 17 to 19 minutes. I do think they're a pivot away from super chalky Islanders. I'd throw them in the bucket with like that Zegras, Terry, Strome line. But for me, this is a Utah game. I really do like the Utah power play guys.
I do like Utah as well. Grubauer sucks. Not that Decord has been any better recently, but Grubauer is absolute cheeks. Let's talk about defensemen. Top of the board, Makar, Cedar, Morrissey, Bouchard, Montour. Those are the guys 6K and up. The only guy I really want to consider there is Makar. I think, you know, Montour is fine in MME. Bouchard's fine in MME. But really, if I'm spending up, it's Makar. And otherwise, I'm going to be in the mid-range or cheap guys.
Yeah, I'll say 5,500 and above. Like Noah Dobson has the best point per dollar value. I always worry when Noah Dobson has the best point per dollar value because, oh boy, is that Islanders team bad. But he does shoot. He does block shots. It is Calvin Pickard in net. I don't know if he's any worse than Stuart Skinner at this point. Honestly, Skinner's borderline unplayable. It's getting to Jack Campbell territory. But it is a good matchup for the Islanders. But, like, you know, Cale Makar does have the top projection. Evan Bouchard just behind him. I worry about ice time for Bouchard. Seems like it's kind of sketchy. Like the Nurse has been getting 25 minutes. Speaking of which, I like Darnell Nurse in the mid-price range. Jackson Lacombe in the mid-price range. Mackenzie Weegar in the mid-price range. Shane Gostisbehere, I think, makes a lot of sense, especially to pair him if you're playing with Carolina 1. But, like, Nurse, Dobson, Lacombe, especially in that 4 to 6K range. Make a lot of sense. Esa Lindell still getting good ice time for Dallas. A couple of the Winnipeg guys, like with Pionk out, I imagine Dylan Sandberg plays more. And they said Colin Miller is going to run the second power play unit. And he's one of the few right-handed shot defensemen they have that can kind of take some of Pionk's minutes. So I don't wonder if Colin Miller doesn't get a lot more, a much bigger role with Pionk out. He's really cheap. Sean Walker on the second power play unit for Carolina, I think is fine. Michael Kesselring under 3K. I really do like him. Joel Hanley from Calgary. He's been playing 19, 20 minutes. He's under 3K. I guess Ryan Lindgren, but do I really want to play Ryan Lindgren? I think I'd rather just play Colin Miller. So Miller, Kesselring, Hanley are kind of the guys under 3K I was looking at. Oh yeah, we shouted out Blankenberg earlier. Blankenberg obviously at 3,200 or whatever it is, 3,500, running the Nashville power play.
Yeah. Let's talk about goalies. This is up there for one of the worst goalie slates I've ever seen, and there have been some bad ones. Here's the top 8K and above. It's going to be the Carolina starter, Calvin Pickard, Scott Wedgwood, possibly UC Saros. I don't want to spend up for goalie here. Under 8K, Hellbuck. The goalies in the Winnipeg game make some sense. Hellbuck at 7,800, Ottinger at 7,600. I'm fine with Vimelka at 7,900. Lucas Dostal at 7,400. I know Nashville's won 5 in a row or whatever, but Anaheim might actually be the best team they faced in the last 5. So Dostal. I don't really want to play Wolf or Sorokin. That just seems a bit rough. I don't mind Talbot if it's Talbot at 7K, but I don't think I'd be going below Dostal.
I think it's Mrazek starting.
Mrazek.
I don't think it's been confirmed, but I remember McClellan saying that he wanted to give Mrazek another start or something like that. So
6,800.
That's the thing, is Mrazek might be coming in at 6,800. I'm not a fan of it per se, just because the Detroit penalty kill is so bad. But at 6,800 against a high volume shooting team, that's pretty interesting to me. I do like Dostal as well from Anaheim. 7,400. He's another cheap guy I would use if you don't want to go all the way down to Mrazek. I think Justin Anunin is going to start for Nashville because they have a game tomorrow in Los Angeles. So it makes sense to me that they'd save Saros for that one. So it might be Anunin in net for Nashville. I don't have interest in playing him. It just makes me a little bit more interested in Anaheim. For the expensive guys, I think I'm kind of scared to play Scott Wedgwood on the road at 8,100. I don't like playing expensive goalies on the road almost regardless of the matchup, but against the Calgary team missing Michael Backlund that has trouble scoring anyway, I don't mind Blackwood. And I'll shout out Freddie Anderson just because he has the second highest projection of any goalie on the board here tonight. But I think Connor Hellbuck at 7,800. I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of leaning towards either going all the way up to a Wedgwood Anderson or just punting all the way down to Mrazek and kind of crossing my fingers. There's really not a lot in that mid price range that I have a ton of interest in tonight other than Dostal at 7,400.
Yeah. Goalie sucks. If you like a guy, you play him. Hope for the best. Spin a wheel. Throw a dart. We will be back tomorrow. I don't know how many games are on the main slate. I won't know until tomorrow. But who you liking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going to go with somebody I kind of slandered earlier. I'm going to go with Frank Petrano.
It's always wise to go with the slander pick for the hat trick pick. Hedge your bet there. I don't know if Jake Harry's listening. He should be listening. I'm trying to butter his bread a little bit here. Roman Yossi's not on the slate, so I got to go with his other boy. I'm going Jackson Blake.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Nick Blankenberg.
No. Blankenberg did win him a lot of money when he was on the Blue Jackets, and then he got priced up to 5,400 randomly. But Jackson Blake's his guy. He's probably not watching. He's probably getting a pedicure and getting his jawline waxed or something. But we will be back tomorrow. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Good luck tonight, and we'll see you at 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow.
Good luck tonight, everyone.